table back a little bit, so
Um,
zooms out a little bit.
yeah, possibly.
Let's see.
Better?
A little bit farther back. Okay.
I wonder if we could turn some of these lights on.
There you go. Just like, yeah, that's good. That should show up better.
Totally sure. Yeah. Just one second. I think about as good as it's gonna get.
Sorry,
Yeah.
run the show.
We're glad you guys are here. Yeah. And what are your names?
I'm Nina. Tyler.
Wait, your first name again?
Nina.
Nine. Oh, I've heard that. Well, good to meet you. Glad you made it.
Thank you.
So yeah, my name is Reuben Wadsworth, and I am, I guess, known as a local historian. I teach history at Reub Middle School, and then I teach history, American history at college as well, just one class a semester. And then I write a sort of feature series called the Day series for St. Louis News, about some places around the place. And then recently I started guiding hikes. Where is it going to be best for me, Brad? Over there. Over here? Yes. All right. Okay, we're trying both places. Okay, sounds good. So that's who I am, just to give you an indication. So we'll talk, really Springdale history. Let's see. Kathy, could I get you to be my clicker?
Yeah.
Please? Which would make it a lot easier. Should have brought mine. So yeah, we're talking about early Springdale and Zion history today. So should be fun. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, just the space bar, or yeah, space bar. Oh wait, change that. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So Springdale was pretty early on in the settlement of Southern Utah, 1862. It, along with Grafton and Rockville were settled at about the same time. And so obviously one of their main goals was they were in the cotton mission. So they wanted to grow cotton, especially in Grafton. And so one of the first things they had to do when they got here was get those ditches going so they could irrigate the crops. So that was very important. So I love this quote from Carl Larson's book, I Was Called Dixie. It says, the problem of controlling the virgin at Springdale never reached the proportions it did farther down the river. For much of Springdale is north fork of the Virgin. Okay, it is rocky, and while the subject of floods, the farmers of Springdale have a solid foundation on which to build instead of the quicksands of the flow down the river. So Springdale was a better place to settle because there wasn't that flood potential. Because that flood potential just gave headaches to especially Rockville and especially Grafton, and that's why Grafton is not a ghost town. They didn't want to fight with the river and floods anymore. So Springdale was, of the East River communities, was kind of the one that had the most success as far as irrigation goes. So how Springdale got its name? Yeah, the most well-accepted story of how Springdale got its name is the wife Albert Petty. What was her name? Catherine, that's right. So he asked her to name the place, and she named it Springdale because of the spring that was on the property. So Albert Petty was one of the first settlers. He established a grist mill. That grist mill supplied flour to other settlers in Schumansburg, Rockville, and Grafton, which were the four upper communities. Built a fashion cabin of rough-hewn logs. Some of the settlers were in dugouts before they built their normal houses. Illness was rampant sometimes, malaria, hunger, and we already talked about the floods. Okay, go ahead. so he was running some cattle up there. He planted fruit trees, sugarcane, vegetables. Again, about where Zion was this day. And I love this. On the commander of the canyon, he wrote, "A man can worship God among the Jewish people as well as he can in any man-made church. This is Zion." So he's the one that named it. And this guy, Isaac Newton, reminds me a lot of John Muir, because John Muir felt that same way about Yosemite. And John Muir kind of became the self-appointed guardian of Yosemite. Well, Isaac Newton really wasn't the self-appointed guardian of Zion, but he gave it his name. And he truly felt that it was Zion and it was a refuge because of all the persecutions they'd gone through. He thought that, hey, this is going to be a pretty safe place for us. So it became known as Zion or Little Zion. And then next slide. But Brigham Young, on his visit to Springdale in 1870, that he wanted to see Zion. And so he went up there and saw it, and he said it was not Zion. And so the settlers took it literally, and for a while there, they called it not Zion. So, kind of funny. But yeah, still, obviously, even though the president of the church said it's not Zion, they're stuck, thankfully. So local Paiutes apparently were afraid of the Zion Canyon. So this marker right here, the discovery of Zion Canyon, if you've seen Shirt Off My Back, and then the building of Zion Pizza and Noodles in between those two buildings is this one. It was put there by the Springdale pioneers in the 30s. A lot of markers were put in the 30s. But it just talks about Nephi Johnson, the area settler, being the first one to venture into Zion Canyon. But then, Isaac Newton and William Pete built cabins up there. So this thing says, the Indians were uneasy about going into Zion even in daylight. This guy wrote, they feared injury from death from the evil and capricious gods who were there. So that's what the story goes. Okay. Who knows if it's really true? That's the folklore that we've grown up with, right, Brad? So anyway, go ahead. So Springdale early on would be considered a bedroom community of Rockville because 1866 there were major Indian troubles. You've heard of maybe the Black Hawk War? Have you heard of that term? It's where the Indians were raiding the cattle and were just begging for food from settlers. There was a case of Indians killing settlers and then the settlers trying to get revenge, getting revenge on the wrong Indians. So it just caused a lot of trouble. And so at that time, especially 1866, Brigham Young wanted to consolidate settlements. So these upriver communities were all consolidated into Rockville. So Grafton, Schunesburg, Springdale, they're all consolidated into Rockville. They were still tending their fields, then they'd go all night to Rockville. That only lasted for about a year and a half, 2 years. And so after the Indian troubles were declared done, they were able to move back. And there were some settlers who were pretty stubborn, and even though called for profit, hey, let's consolidate settlements, they still stayed where they were. Only a few. So anyway, okay, go ahead. Thank you. Okay, so Grafton was part of this, obviously, and it's probably, I would dare say it is Utah's most famous gold town. It's the most photographed, and it is more well known not for its pioneer history, but for its Indian history. So Grafton settlers came actually in 1859. They were tasked to grow cotton. It was a year that they grew too much cotton and they couldn't have enough to eat. So they realized that, we need to actually grow something to eat rather than just concentrate on this sort of cotton. And that happened in other places as well. A flood in 1862 completely destroyed the town. It destroyed a few other places that were settled over here. So destroyed the fort at Santa Clara. It destroyed Fort Harmony, which later became New Harmony, as we know today. And Fort Harmony was actually the first settlement in Washington County. Parowan was the first settlement in southern Utah. So 1862 flood was huge, and that was just kind of a precursor of things to come. And so, yeah, the fight with the river proved fatal for Grafton, and by, let's see, by 1906, when the river canal was finished, settlers started moving to Hurricane, and then the last settler left in 1944. And those were the ones that were living in this island. Along the Rust Pass, which is the most famous, most common house there. But anyway, the most famous way that people have seen Grafton is movies, and Bush Cassidy Sons Kid was one of the main ones in Springdale. And the famous scene of Captain Ross, who played Ed Place, and Bush Cassidy, who was played by Paul Newman. That scene, that bike scene with raindrops falling on the head, was probably one of the most iconic scenes in the movie, and it was there in Grafton. So people who haven't seen Grafton in person have seen it on the big screen, or obviously through DVD or movie for this. So yeah, this is kind of funny, and this is very typical for pioneer settlement down here. Is these settlers in Grafton came from the green rolling hills of England, come to this desert landscape, and they weren't there to appreciate the scenery like we do now. They were just there to survive. And so the scenery became a commodity later on, which we'll talk about. I already said all this, so we'll move on. I got ahead of myself. I already said all this too. So yeah, Grafton was a major social center as well. This schoolhouse, built in 1886, a lot of dances with live music. People from settlements all over the place would come to this. But yeah, Grafton was short-lived. Yeah, 1859 to 1906, like I said, it started dying because of that losing battle with the river. A lot of residents from Grafton helped build their canal, and once their canal was built, they were able to farm 20 acres without any flood potential, whereas they were farming close to the river, so they're farming smaller plots close to the river, a lot greater flood potential. So Hurricane was a good deal. 20 acres, that's a lot. And they actually had an acre lot in town as well. Okay, go ahead. All right, so Flanigan's. We're talking about Flanigan's, obviously where Flanigan's in. And interestingly, descendants, we'll let her call me. Interestingly, descendants of the Flanagans did not establish this place. Another couple established this place, but they named it Flanigan's in honor of these pioneers here in the zone. So the Flanagans came in the 1870s, and they had a dugout just across the street, across the street from where Spot Dog is. And the remains of that dugout are still there. I honestly haven't seen them for myself. I gotta go with it. So what is now known as the Watchman was known as Flanigan's Peak back then, but it's obviously the Watchman now, kind of a metaphorical name, which is not a lot of. The Watchman because it's here in the Southland Park, watching, those who remember. But yeah, they farm land here. They built ditches. They're a Flanagan ditch that they built. You can still see around this other day. It's on that National Historic Register as well. So anyway, all right, next. So yeah, and that's what this is. This is actually a copper ditch. I think this is the Flanagan's ditch. This is in the Washington campground. This is just down from the Human History Museum. It used to be the old visitor center. And so the remnants are still there. Obviously, this is cemented in later on. This is not pioneer ditch, but anyway, their irrigation legacy still lives on. And then this is a ditch that's there just along the street in town has been filling up with black rocks. So anyway, yeah. And then one of the fun stories about Flanagans is that, yeah, Rob, we'll wait for the crowd.
She usually isn't so rambunctious.
Yeah, no worries. Well, yeah, one of the fun stories about the Flanagans is Thomas Flanagan, the dad, his son, David Flanagan, devised a way to get, locally sourced lumber, because the lumber that they were getting, most planters were getting, was from Mount Trumbull, which was like 65, 70 miles away. So to go make a trip to get the lumber, it was a 10-day round trip. And so this David Flanigan, he was roaming the hills above Springdale, and he shot I think he shot a bighorn sheep.
Yes, it was a bighorn sheep.
It was a bighorn sheep, yeah. And then he came down, and then a few weeks later, he and his friends, he wanted to show his friends the area, so they went there. And then on that trip, he discovered what became known as Cable Mountain. And he was even thinking at the age of 15, hey, I can devise a way to get lumber from this plateau down to the canyon floor, and that would be a lot quicker than going Mount Trumbull. It was a little locally sourced lumber. Okay, go ahead. So he, 1888 was that trip to up to devise, kind of start to devise a plan to get that lumber. And in his recollections, he wrote that it was one of the wonders of the world. So he's pretty proud of himself for what he did. Okay, moving on. So it wasn't until 1900 that he was actually able to get going, and he didn't really have a lot of help. There were, I don't know, like 2 or 3 guys, if I remember right, that helped him out. But they purchased a bale of 6,000 feet of wire, weighing more than 100 pounds, and they finally got to the top of Cable Mountain. And so getting the stuff there to make this operation was really hard. And your great-great-grandfather, right, was the one that helped build the road into there. So
They built the
built the
eastern
trail as well.
trail that they brought the wire up through.
Yeah, exactly.
And Brian Hidden's great-grandfather was David Flanigan.
Yeah, okay. So there you go. You know
They went up together to put that wire together. Somehow I'm trying to get the wire on the spool and get it set up. The wire hung up in a tree.
Oh, that's right.
The two of them sat there on the ledge and shot the tree with a .22 rifle until the limb broke, and the wire came free, and then they were able to put it all up.
That's right. That's right. So in his recollection, he said this: the required concerts of 3 men. That's right. For the greater part of the day, they accomplished this, where there was nothing worthy of being called a trail at the time. Okay, and so the distance between the top to the canyon floor was 2,000 feet, and there was a 5-ply thick wire on one side and 3-ply thick wire on the other side, and the 3-ply was for guiding the load down to the floor, and the 5-ply was for carrying the load. So he knew what he was doing, and it took like 8 or 9 months just to get this all together so we could actually attempt something. And it wasn't until the fall that year that they were able to even attempt something. Next slide. And so they had to keep changing things, and mainly they were changing things up on the bottom. They had to keep moving the the frame farther and farther so they could get it to line.
The wire stretched too. The original wire stretched.
Exactly. And then you had to figure out a good braking system as well.
Right.
And so that's what took a while. After a few years of trial and error, he finally developed a successful design. And by 1904, he perfected the design, and he was ready to promote himself use my lumber instead of use lumber that I can source instead of going all the way to Mount Trumbull. And so, I think, let's see, yeah, next slide, please. So, yeah, at this time, Springdale was about to build a public building, and he was trying to convince them to allow him to get the lumber, and then he also convinced a sawmill operator on Mount Trumbull to move his operation to what became known as Carolina, obviously. And so, but in the end, Springdale still went with the Trumbull Mountain guy, and the Trumbull Mountain guy reneged on his promise to bring the sawmill up to Carolina. And I love these quotes. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this. There was a prophecy from Brigham Young that lumber would come down that mountain and be faster. But in his recollection of this, David Flanigan said this. He said, "I must confess that I am not one good boy, and I was not a good man from the viewpoint of theology. It seemed that I naturally liked to stay and do, eat, drink, smoke, and chew the things which theology, as he says, said were not good for me. And there were duties which theology said I should attend to that I neglected." And so, I love this too. He went on to say that he sometimes stirred the peace on the Sabbath with his rifle, which was considered very wicked, and that he smoked a pipe, which he said at times made a public sacrifice of him. So, this is a very unfortunate part of the story where in this ultra-conservative, LDS Mormon pioneer atmosphere, he was shunned because he went against the mold. And so that is what cost him that contract with Springdale and this Mount Trumbull guy. And this is actually what made his operation a little harder because a lot of people didn't want to do business with it. So anyway, go ahead. So yeah, he made a go of it, and he ran it successfully for almost 2 years. But just keeping things up, he actually bought a sawmill himself, set up a sawmill up there, but it was not the best sawmill, it was pretty shoddy. So he actually did make it commercially for a little while, but just the trouble with the prejudice, he wasn't, from what I gather, much of a businessman, and so it really wasn't a great financial success. So his last load came down Christmas Eve of 1906. And then he sold it to some other partners. Okay, go ahead, Kathy. Thank you. And so, yeah, so he sold it in 1906 to Alfred Stout, Moby Gifford, and then in 1908, Frank H. Petty. Can't remember, was he a relative of Albert Petty? Was he a son? So was he a grandson or a son?
I think he was a son.
A son, okay, that's what I thought.
And Albert Petty was the guy that was out at Trumbull, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, he was an experienced sawmill. He took over the operation, and his two sons, Charles B. and little Frank, were part of the operation as well. And during their operation of it, they started to have human passengers go in. So Quinby Stewart, who was part of the party that was, surveying what would become the Coontuit National Monument when Zion first came on the national scene. He was the first human passenger down, and they had some close calls, kind of like the first zip line, if you will. But no one died from going down on the line, as a human. And then the last commercial load, which was used in the original Zion laws, came down in either 1926 or 1924, depending on the source. So that was the last commercial load, and then in 1927, Park Service dismantled it because there was an accident in 1926 with this teacher who took the brunt of, what was it, Brad? It was like some metal thing on that cord that hit him in the head and died instantly. And then there were other people up at the sawmill that were killed in one of them in a lightning strike. No, two in a lightning strike on one of the fires. So
Cabin fire.
yeah, cabin fire, exactly. So 3 people killed during an operation, but yeah, none on the cable. And then 1930, they took the drawworks from the bottom. They dismantled that, so it was a safety issue. And so that obviously signaled the end of the drawworks. So it's interesting thing. The framework for the original drawworks is still up there. And you can hike to it. But it's, 8 miles round trip, I think, is the shortest.
That's around it.
So
You mentioned Frank Petty. I don't know if you mentioned his size.
yeah,
In fact,
he's a big man. Was he like 300 pounds?
he was close to 300 pounds.
Yeah.
And he rode the cable down as opposed to hiking the trail
Yes, that's right.
almost daily. So
I remember that. Okay, let's move on, please. Okay, so we'll talk early design history here for a little bit. So, like I said before, early settlers weren't worried about scenery, but later on, photographers, artists, writers, they really enjoyed the scenery. And one of the major ones was Frederick Bellebaugh, who was part of John Wesley Powell's trips down the Green Colorado rivers in the late 1860s, early 1870s. And so he came in the summer of 1903 to Zion, and he did a lot of painting. He did an article for Scribner's Magazine, and this is what literally put Zion on the map. And this is interesting. This painting somebody found at auction in Tennessee. The Zion Forever Project found an auction in Tennessee and were able to get it. Thank goodness, and it's in their collection today. So he was kind of one of the first that really started to publicize Zion. People actually saw pictures of Zion. And one of the story goes is that it was the World's Fair in St. Louis in 1904, and there were people looking at his paintings, and they said, "Oh, this can't be real." But there was a Hershey boy from Rockville who was passing through, and he said, "Yeah, this is real, and this is my backyard." And so
he was actually on a mission there.
What's that?
He was on a mission.
Yeah,
For the LDS Church.
Yeah, exactly. And so by 1909, it received national monument status. It was originally called the Coontaweet National Monument, and some say that's a Paiute word that means straight canyon. It's kind of originated by John Wesley Powell himself, actually. But that didn't last long because Coontaweet was hard to spell, hard to pronounce, and so it was made Zion in 1918, and then in 1919 it received national park status. So that's kind of a quick story of how it came to go ahead. And then, I already talked about this. I was getting ahead of myself. Okay, go ahead. Interesting about this, we talked about the original name, that was known as Flanigan Beach, now Washington. And then there was a couple other peaks that were named by several
patriarchs.
Yeah, exactly. What I'm getting at is a lot of names in Zion are religious metaphors, but most people think that they were the LDS pioneer settlers. But in reality, a lot of them were this guy, this Methodist minister named Frederick Fisher. He went up Zion Canyon in September 1916, led by local boys, and so they were the ones that named a lot of the formations there. Like for the patriarchs, like
The Great White Throne.
Great White Throne, like Angel's Landing, hold on, well, it's true that some of them come from the Book of Mormon, and we're obviously given by other saints. The canyon in the last half of the 1800s, many familiar names were given by God, and that's what I'm said. Okay, next one. So when this Frederick Fisher first saw the Great White Throne, he said he would name the Great White Throne. It is by all odds America's masterpiece. I have looked for this mountain my whole life, but never expected to find it in this world. So that's kind of fun. So the Great Organ, Altar of Sacrifice, which is part of the Towers of the Virgin. You can see from the Human History Museum, the old visitor center. You look to your west, and you see the Towers of the Virgin. Altar of Sacrifice is in there. All right, go ahead. transportation to southern Utah. In the form of the Arrowhead Trail, is called then. Then it morphed into Old Highway 91, and then I-15 kind of follows a lot of where Old Highway 91 was. Some even call it the Zion National Park Highway. So this is a map that shows that, obviously. Kind of fun. And then the railroad, the Mississippi Railroad saw a chance to really make some money, and they wanted to publicize the area as well. Okay, go ahead. So yeah, National Park designation came in 1919, like I talked about, and it was formally dedicated September 15th, 1920, with a lot of dignitaries. Stephen Mather, the first National Park director, the governor of Utah, Governor Sprague, and LDS Church president, was there. And a lot of speakers talked about the need for good roads to get people to the park. Okay. And this is kind of a fun story. So the Union Pacific Railroad saw a chance to, like I said, make this a place for tourists to obviously increase its revenue. And so it did a publicity stunt with 6 college-age girls that it sent down to experience Zion for the first season it was a national park. So they were actually the first ones to be here, and I think they opened it like May 1st, 1920. And so these girls did activities that a lot of tourists can't do now. There are trails that are now closed, places you really can't get to anymore. But a lot of pictures taken, lots of articles written that were sent to papers nationwide, and it got a lot of publicity, and it was a good publicity stunt. So, and one of these girls was actually the daughter of John Woodstow, who was a LDS pastor, and was former president of the University of Utah. Okay, go ahead. And then, so the Utah Parks Company was established as a subsidiary of the Union Pacific Railroad, and it is what built Zion Lodge. So this is Zion Lodge in its heyday, the late 1920s, and it used a method that it called parkitecture, with locally sourced materials that would kind of blend into the natural environment by an architect named David Flanigan. So Zion Lodge was one of the first in 1925, and then the Utah Parks Company established 3 other lodges. North end of the Grand Canyon, called Grand Canyon Lodge, Bryce Canyon Lodge, and then Cedar Breaks Lodge. And they would do these bus tours, and buses, like 12-passenger buses that look like this, and they call it the Grand Circle Tour. And so you go to each of the lodges, and you have the lodge staff greeting you, and then seeing you away. And the food was legendary apparently. And so Zion Lodge and Grand Canyon Lodge, are not completely original because they burned. Grand Canyon Lodge really not like the early 1930s, and it was immediately rebuilt. Zion Lodge in 1966, and it was immediately rebuilt. But this portion was intact. It was the cabins that burned. But Cedar Breaks Lodge, unfortunately, was torn down in the early 1970s. Bryce Canyon Lodge has been left untouched. So good piece of the heyday of National Park accommodations in history. Okay, go ahead. And then this picture I think shows best this architecture. This stone looks exactly like the monolith around it, and this looks a lot like blends in with obviously the other trees there. So this shows you what architecture is all about, and they did a good job blending in. Okay, go ahead. And then I already talked about this. And the 265,000 board feet of lumber used in the Zion Lodge, I think I mentioned this before, came down the cable mountain rollers. So that was a big deal. Okay, go ahead.
Reuben, I was going to mention
Go ahead.
the 200 or so kids that did the Sing Away events were here primarily to work in the summer as they cleaned the cabins, they'd cook, bust the tables, they would do other things, and then they would have the big Sing Away, and they were super talented and super
Yeah.
rehearsed.
And most of them were college students.
Most of them were college
Or,
students.
yeah,
for the summer.
yeah.
Was there summertime work?
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, one of the ways that those tours worked is that the tourists came by train from a spur line that was built from London to Cedar City, and so from Cedar City they were bused to do that Grand Circuit tour. And Washington County never got a railroad, so Lund and then Modena were the closest ones, and they were actually pretty far away. Okay, go ahead. And so, yeah, Utah Parks Company. This is an ad for the Utah Parks Company to try to get people here with those Grand Circle tours. And you know that Good Roads movement spelled the doom of the Utah Parks Company because people just weren't coming from the railroad anymore; they were coming by car. So the Utah Parks Company closed down in the '60s. They lasted until the '60s, but yeah, they're done after that, and other concessionaires took over after that. Okay, go ahead. So yeah, Rockville Bridge, I gotta mention this real quick, because the Rockville Bridge is something interesting because it was the National Park Service expending money outside Park Service boundaries for the Park Service's gain. So Stephen Mather poured a lot of his own money into this truss bridge in Rockville to shorten the route from Zion to Grand Canyon by, what was it, like 33 miles, which was a big deal. And then in, let's see, about 10 years ago, there was talk of tearing down the Rockville Bridge because its weight limit wasn't very good, and it's only 1 lane. And so they did a survey with Rockville residents, and Rockville residents said, no, heck no, we're not going to, don't tear down our bridge. And so they made the money and got grants to rehabilitate it, and so its weight limit is good now. And then there are also plans to build a 2-lane bridge a little further west.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll see how long that's going to take.
It's actually just west of Rockville. It's going to cross over.
Okay, that's right. And is it before Grafton or after Grafton? It's before Grafton.
It's right in the middle of Grafton.
Right in the middle of Grafton. Okay. All right. So you know better than I. But I just think it's a big deal because it is, yeah, National Park Service looking outside the box. I mean, kind of the same thing happened with the Zion Shuttle later on. National Park Service expending money outside the park for the Park Service's gain, especially with the Springdale Town Shuttle. So kind of a precursor to that. Okay, go ahead. All right, yeah, we basically talked about that. Okay, go ahead. And then the Zion Mount Carmel Tunnel was built 6 years after the Rockville Bridge, and it shortened the route from Zion to Rice Canyon by 7 miles and the Grand Canyon by 20 miles. And so it was blasted out, and then they bored these 6 galleries, they're called, and they shoved all the debris out of those galleries, which has never happened today. And then there were 6 tight switchbacks from the canyon floor to get up to the tunnel. And this next slide really shows it well. It shows the scheme. So we got the 6 switchbacks. Oh god, I always forget. Wasn't the work camp right about here, right?
Yes.
And then you got the 6 galleries here. And then in the day, you could stop at those galleries and actually look out. But today, you can't. And some of them are filled in, unfortunately. So the next one. So yeah, here's one of the galleries in Hayday where you could stop and look. And the funny story about this is it was dedicated July 4th, 1930. And at the time there was a governor's conference in Salt Lake City. And so all the governors came down to participate in the ceremony. And all but 6 governors in the United States were at this ceremony. And one of the governors that was missing was Franklin D. Roosevelt, governor of New York, and obviously future president of the United States 2 years later. Okay, go ahead. And then, so like I said, scenery became a commodity, and so Springdale has, reshaped itself from a, sleepy farming town to a gateway community to a national park. And And so it was officially incorporated in 1909, but they're still trying to keep that pioneer spirit alive. Still, thankfully, with when the highway was redone, they kept those ditches, and they discovered this old granary, like what 10 or 12 years ago, and so they're doing what they can to preserve history. They've got the old pioneer cemetery up there that they've preserved, and they've got a trail over here. It's called the Steamboat Mountain Trail, and that's what West Temple used to be called. That's what the pioneers called it. So they're trying to keep this pioneer spirit alive. So anyway, and I think that's it. That's it.
They actually quarried a lot of the rock. It's right up there on that trail that goes up Steamboat Mountain.
Oh really?
They quarried a lot of the rock right up at the base of that and brought it down into Springdale to build a lot of the rock structure you see.
Okay.
The rock ditch, the rock church.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, any questions for anybody? Any questions? Especially from the newbies. Brian already knew this whole story, right?
Yep, much.
And so did Kathy, right?
I didn't know a lot of it.
Oh, yeah. So any questions? Okay.
Some people always ask, why is this named the Virgin River?
Oh, yeah. They should have kept the Paiute name, Parus, I think.
What was it?
Parus. That's why the Parus Trail is called Parus Trail. That's the original name of the river. That's what Paiutes called it. I think it just means like rolling rock or bubbling brook or something like that.
So when did it change to Virgin River?
Um,
Why?
the Spanish explorers. Well, actually, Dominguez and Escalante called it El Rio del Sulfurio, which means like sulfur river. But that didn't stick, obviously. So I wish Potter would stop.
Whenever they
Well,
get a
because of the
flood,
hot box.
whenever they get a flood down
Yeah.
the river, it gets super fast, turbulent,
Oh yeah.
and very muddy.
Yeah.
They used to plant trout and fish in the river, and you used to be able to fish it
Yeah.
up in the national park. After years,
Oh, I didn't know
they kind of gave up on the trout fishing
that.
and kind of made a joke that they had to train the fish to swim backwards because the river was at times so
Yeah.
muddy. So
Well, I mean, the Virgin River does have a few species of fish that aren't found anywhere else, like the virgin spinefish. Right?
yes,
And there's like one other, I can't remember the name of it.
the Spindase minnow, the woundfin minnow,
Moonfin. That's right.
Okay.
and I think there was one more as well. I think it was the Virgin River chub.
Okay. That's right.
So they're still fishing the river to this day?
Yeah, there's actually German brown trout. If you go up into the high end of the Narrows, you
Yeah.
can catch German brown trout up in there
Mhm.
that come down out of Navajo Lake. So.
Oh yeah, that's right. And yeah, the Virgin River starts there in Navajo Lake. Well, what is it? That's the North Fork, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the North Fork.
North Fork.
Comes,
and there's-
you can actually hike from Chamberlain's Ranch down through.
Yeah.
It's about 18 miles.
Yeah. That's fine. So any other questions?
So that's what those little arches up in the rock is, they're called galleries?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
where
that's
they
all.
blasted the
Yeah, it's
gallery?
really blasted to really to put the debris on.
Right.
Yeah. So they left them there as the
I noticed they were kind of all over in here, just the little arches, but they have like the holes in the rock,
Mhm.
and some are filled in. Most of them are filled in, but
Yeah.
I didn't know where those came from.
Yeah.
So they started from both ends of the tunnel. They didn't just go from one end through. They started from both ends. They had a crew on each end.
Oh, so they had to blast.
They had
it.
to go into the middle, and they were only off 6 inches
Yep.
when they got to the
That was
middle.
amazing.
Back in those days, that is
It
amazing.
is.
Yeah.
With the tools and, the survey tools and stuff that they had in those days, that was amazing.
And I think personally that something like the design tunnel could never be built today.
Yeah.
With all the environmental regulations.
Yeah, they would not let it happen.
So it's a good thing it was built in the late 20s. Otherwise, I don't know. what
So
was-
Richard Crawford was just on here watching this, and his dad, Samuel Crawford, was one of the last ones to operate the drawworks.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
he was watching you, so.
Okay.
He actually did a video for the Park Service on how the drawworks happens and
Yeah.
how it works.
Yeah, you showed me.
So it's a little bit hard to understand,
It is. It is.
But, it's quite
It's fun to
fascinating.
see though.
Yeah.
Nice. Well,
We were like just wondering how much does it, because I heard that something fell a while back, or whatever. Is there rocks falling?
yeah, there are regularly landslides. And there've been some trail closures over the years, like the Animal Pools Trail, Lower Animal Pools was closed for a while.
Yeah.
Weeping Rock on the trail to
Eastern Trail.
East Rim was closed for a while.
Yes.
Yeah, so.
You're living down in Rockville, hopefully you don't live up underneath the cliff too.
Yeah, exactly.
We're kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
We're probably
It's not a matter of if the rocks are gonna come down, it's a matter of when.
When.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
And then is there anything that they have like man-made here? Is this all 100, except for the tunnels, of course, but like, is there anything that they've done?
As far as like the scenery?
The irrigation ditches that they still
Yeah.
utilize to water trees
Yeah.
is there. There used to be a fruit tree orchard just over where the visitor center and parking lot area and the Watchman Campground is. There also used to be a big fruit orchard up where the Natural History
Mhm.
Center is, and that's where my family all lived before they were moved out of the park. The Crawfords lived up there, so.
And yeah, like I said, one of the best places to see remnants of the old ditches are just south of that Human History Museum.
Okay.
But that trail is closed temporarily right now, I think.
Yes.
From what I remember, so hopefully I'll have some. The Washington campground, they're remnants, but they're not as visible as others.
Cool. I heard that fire that they had, the way that they had the irrigation was how it saved those houses or whatever is that.
Oh, I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, I think so.
That's just what my cousin was telling me.
Oh, okay.
It was right before we moved in, and she's like, your house probably should have burnt down.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she said that the irrigation saved the old way that we had it, or whatnot, but anyway. I'm sorry, the last question I had was, is everything just growing fast now, or is it kind of
I
staying
mean,
this way?
Springdale's got some good ordinances in place that, I mean, it's not gonna be like the tourist trap tackiness you see in other gateway communities like Gatlinburg. I mean, there used to be ordinance on the books that they wouldn't even allow chains here, it had to be mom and pop stuff. But the subway fought it and won, so the subway is actually on a chain here in Springdale. Probably others will come, I'm guessing, but yeah, they've kind of tamped down on that kind of stuff, so it's a lot better, I think, than other gateway communities, honestly.
The Zion Pizza Noodle used to be the church house in Springdale. That's where I went to church when Kathy also went to church when we were little here. I lived here till I was 11 and moved to Hurricanes.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, good place to be. So if you ever wanna be a guide on a hike, especially the Hurricane Canal, I do that on the side as well. So it's just Ranger Adventure on Instagram or rangerroute.com. If you ever interested. And then if you're, let's go back. If you're ever interested in, oh yeah, no, it's good. And if you're interested in local history, do a search of Day Series, St. George's Day Series, and it comes up with a portal of all the stories I've written on local history. And I compiled these in a series of books called Reub Collections. Volume 1 is about Washington County, Volume 2 is about places outside of Washington County, basically within a 4-mile radius, in southern Utah, northern Arizona, and southern Nevada. So, just a shameless plug
Yeah.
about what I do.
Thank you.
So, well, hey, thanks for coming.
Yes, no,
Glad
glad we could make it. I know it was hard with my kids, so sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I got 3 of mine, so
Sounds really cool, but thumbs up.
Okay.
Thank
All right,
you all.
thanks for coming.
Thank you all for tuning in tonight on our live broadcast as well.
All right.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Ruben.
Hey, thank you.
Awesome job.
All right.